To this now. Universities South Africa hopes to resume classes on the 20th of April. Vice-Chancellors of the various institutions have agreed to do all they can to complete the 2020 academic year. Now, the institutions are forced to shut down. They were forced to shut down early and extend holidays as the country fights the curve of the spread of this virus. Now, CEO of the Universities South Africa, Professor Ahmed Bawa, joins us via Skype now. Prof, a very good morning to you. Firstly, how firm is the date of 20th April for the resumption of the academic year?
Good morning, Chloe, and thank you for having me on your program again. I think that we all have to accept that we're in very uncertain times at the moment. So, the universities are really looking at April the 20th as a kind of planning horizon, really, depending on what happens in terms of the trajectory of the lockdown, of the pandemic and the lockdown. So, of course, if the lockdown is stopped on the 16th of April, then campuses will resume on the 20th. Clearly, there'll be new conditions, just issues around social distancing and so on. So universities will have to work around that. Many of our classes have more than 500 students in them, so we'll have to rearrange the kind of interaction that takes place. But in addition to that, we're also looking at different scenarios. We're also saying, what happens if we open on the 1st of June? What happens if we have intermittent lockdowns and so on? So there's a whole lot of planning happening at the moment.
So it's all dependent.
Also mention.
Sorry, Prof. So it's all dependent on this trajectory of the COVID-19 pandemic. Let me ask you this. Are the 26 universities able to capacitate students for online lectures if push comes to shove?
So let me just say that the principle is that we will complete the academic year. And even if it means going into the early part of 2021, we will complete the academic year for all students. The universities are at different, levels of preparedness in terms of online learning. But we are working very hard at the moment to try and understand how some form of alternative delivery of learning and teaching can take place during periods of lockdown. And clearly, the big challenge will be for us to try and understand how to ensure that students who don't have devices, do have devices, students that are in areas where there's no connectivity, have connectivity and so on.
Prof, let me ask you this. Have universities been approached by health authorities to try and help in this mass testing exercise that the country is embarking upon? And I ask you this because I understand that the various institutions of higher learning have very sophisticated laboratories that could help speed up the process.
No, I should mention that there are three major discussions, I think, that are going on with the Department of Health. The first one is indeed trying to understand how to bring together the capacity of our laboratories to do rapid testing and so on. And that's a conversation that's ongoing now between universities and the NICD and the NHLS, the National Health Laboratory Services. The second is the issue around using university facilities for quarantine and isolation purposes in the event that they are needed for that. And the third is that many of the universities are now using technology stations and other manufacturing facilities for manufacturing what are called personal protective equipment, like masks and so on, and ventilators, in fact. So there's a lot of work going on in our universities at the moment.
What about the involvement of medical students in this whole exercise? Is that an option?
That's also, of course, being considered. Not just medical students, but also other students, who can also volunteer and make commitments, make a commitment to working with the Department of Health and others. So there's a lot of work going on in that regard. It will be mainly at a voluntary basis at the moment because there's so many risks involved.
Yeah.
And there's a very powerful kind of conversation going on at the universities at the moment around galvanizing our students. Yes.
How suitable, Prof, are your facilities for quarantine purposes? You're saying that this is under discussion with the authorities.
Yeah. So, if people are placed in isolation, then you would expect rooms that have ensuite bathrooms and so on. Now, none of our residences kitted out for that. But on the other hand, where there's a need for quarantine facilities, where people who are already infected can be housed somewhere where they can be kept away from others who are not infected and so on, then the residences may well be in a position to be used. But there are a whole range of other criteria, like making sure that there are no, communal air conditioning facilities and so on, because that might be a risk and so on. So each university is now looking at the criteria and kind of addressing the issue of whether their facilities are suitable or not.
All right.